The Grand Canyon. I know you've heard it said a million times, but the best way to describe it is one of the greatest wonders of the world. Hi everyone, I'm Robin Sewell, and welcome to Arizona Highways. I know that our crew has been here many times before, but I can always come up with another excuse to come back, and I always learn something more when I do. There have literally been millions of photos taken of the Grand Canyon, but back in the early 1900s, photos taken here were very rare. But then along came a couple of entrepreneurial brothers named Kolb, who started taking photos here of people who were visiting in the early days. And those simple black and white photos changed the way the world looked at the Grand Canyon and Arizona.
This is the story of two brothers who came here and did absolutely extraordinary things.
Take a look at this building. It clings to the edge of the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Perhaps it is only fitting then that the Kolb brothers, Ellsworth and Emery, who lived and worked here, were on the cutting edge too.
When the Kolb brothers came here in 1901, Ellsworth came in with the railroad.
A year later, Ellsworth, brash and adventurous, sent for his younger, more conservative brother Emery. Together they bought photography equipment and set up shop, at first in a tent. Then they built a two-story wooden structure at the Bright Angel Trailhead, a place where they lived and worked. In the beginning, the Kolbs made a living taking pictures of the wondrous Grand Canyon. They were daring. Nothing was ever too dangerous to shoot. In this room with the small window carved out the side, the Kolbs could shoot photos of the mule-riding tourists going down the canyon, then develop the pictures and sell them to the tourists when they came back up the canyon. In 1912, the brothers, like the rest of the world, were bowled over by moving pictures. So they decided to shoot film of a boat trip down the Colorado. However, neither one of them had ever run the rapids of the mighty river, and neither one of them had ever shot movie film.
The movie was what made these guys, because it was like the IMAX of its time. So when they came out with these movies, Charlie Chaplin made his first movie in 1914, to give you some context. So this movie was a really, really big deal.
Ever heard that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger? That bit of logic seemed to work for the Kolbs, whose daring adventure made headlines around the world.
When they completed their big trip in January 1912, they wanted to basically take a local building here, a Forest Service building, and use it as an auditorium to show the public their movies and their pictures. The Forest Service was not willing to give the Kolb brothers a facility. So the Kolb brothers, thinking local, decided to go national. So 1912, 1913, 1914, the winters thereof, they go back east to Washington and Baltimore and Philadelphia and New York and Boston. They show their movies, their pictures, and they become national figures. And so much so, as we indicated, that the National Geographic published an issue about the Kolb brothers in August of 1914.
With every bit of success, the Kolb house and studio got bigger with more additions, including a small new auditorium where Emery lectured and showed the film. But the brothers had two very different personalities and often clashed with one another. The end result was Ellsworth and Emery came to a financial agreement and split up. Ellsworth moved to Los Angeles and Emery stayed behind, continuing to show his film to tourists. By now, there were other additions to the Kolb house. It had a living area for Emery's wife and little girl.
When the National Park Service came here in 1919, they were only 3 years old. And these Kolb brothers were national figures. So there's no way the National Park Service was kicking these guys out.
Emery Kolb fought a long battle with the Park Service, who wanted to get rid of the Kolb house. Emery finally agreed to sell it to them, but with provisions that he would live there until his death. Through the years, Emery told his story, changing his role with the times.
In the 1950s and the 60s and 70s, what became a big deal at the bottom of Grand Canyon? River running. Emery was more than glad to play the role of one of the original pioneers here, the river runner. So in the 50s and 60s and 70s, it was basically people coming here to see living history called Emery Kolb.